Have you ever walked into a room and felt invisible? Not because you weren't dressed right, not because you said the wrong thing, but because the moment you spoke, they already knew you wouldn't bite. You were kind, approachable, open, and in this world, that's the perfect recipe for being underestimated. If you've ever felt like the emotional one in the room, the predictable one, this video is not just advice, it's a weapon. Not to harm others, but to reclaim your presence. Because somewhere between over-explaining and over-giving, you lost the tension that makes people watch their words around you. And in part 7, I'll share one behavior so subtle it makes powerful people lean in without you saying a word. Let me tell you about a man I met 5 years ago. He never raised his voice. He barely spoke. But every time he entered a room, the energy shifted. People adjusted their tone, paused before speaking, not because he demanded it, but because his silence carried consequence. If you've ever wished you could become that person, calm, unreadable, quietly powerful, comment, "I felt that," below. And make sure you stay to the end, because this isn't just about being feared. It's about never needing to prove anything again. You ever wonder why people talk over you, interrupt you, ignore what you just said? It's not because you're not smart enough or not important enough. It's because they've already figured you out, and what's figured out gets filtered out. People don't test the dangerous ones. They test the accessible ones. The ones who smile too soon, laugh too easy, explain too quickly. The ones who bleed before being asked. You've mistaken kindness for strategy. But in a room full of emotional players, the predictable ones are always the pawns. And the truth is, you've been predictable for too long. They know what you'll say when they push you. They know you'll text back, explain why you're distant, apologize even when you're not wrong. Because you've trained them. Not with what you said, but with what you didn't withhold. You gave away your rhythm, your silence, your power. And when someone realizes you'll always try to fix the mood, they start controlling the mood. That's not respect. That's management. They don't see you as a presence. They see you as a response. And responses can be summoned. The most dangerous person in the room is never the loudest. It's the one whose reaction you can't predict. You don't need to shout. You need to stop making it easy to read you. Because once they know your buttons, they'll press them every time they want attention, apology, or control. They'll test your patience, your silence, your limits, not because they hate you, but because you made it safe to do so. So here's the truth. You're not ignored because you're weak. You're ignored because you're obvious. And people don't fear what they understand. They fear what might be coming. And the silence it walks in with. If you've ever been the person who always explains, always apologizes first, comment below, no more. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to expose the most dangerous illusion you've ever been taught. That being good is enough to be respected. You've been told your whole life to be good, be polite, be accommodating, be the one who forgives first, who understands, who stays calm. You thought goodness would earn you protection. But in the real world, goodness without mystery earns you one thing: exposure. See, the good are easy to map. They'll take the call at midnight. They'll explain when misunderstood. They'll soften their tone even when the other side is sharpening theirs. And because of that, they're not feared. They're expected. You might think you're being kind, but in their eyes, you're being calculated. Not by what you withhold, but by what you offer too early. You offer peace before conflict. You offer answers before questions. You offer access before boundaries. You're the good one. And that's exactly why they walk over you without ever looking back. People don't respect goodness alone. They respect what's rare, what's earned, what resists being known. Think about it. How many times have you been available, generous, present, only to watch them disappear the moment they no longer needed you? It's not because you weren't valuable. It's because you were too available to be valued. Real presence isn't built through generosity. It's built through restraint, because the rarest thing in any room is emotional control, not kindness, not warmth, but composure that doesn't ask for applause. Machiavelli didn't fear men who shouted orders. He feared men who never needed to. So here's the truth you were never taught. Being good without being unreadable is a one-way ticket to irrelevance. You want to be remembered? Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them guess how you feel. Let them work for your warmth. Because the good are used, but the unreadable are watched. If you've ever felt exhausted from always being the bigger person, drop a in the comments. You're not weak. You're just over-explained. And next, we'll talk about the Machiavellian edge that changes everything. Why you must choose mystery over kindness. Most people chase likability. They want to be seen as kind, warm, open. Because we've been sold a lie, that if people like you, they'll respect you. But Machiavelli saw through that centuries ago. He knew being liked is not the same as being respected, and being liked without being feared is the same as being ignored. Think of the people you adjust your behavior for. The ones who make you watch your tone. The ones you pause before joking around. Are they loud? Are they desperate to be liked? No, they're calm, measured, unreadable. Their presence alone makes you sit straighter. That's not charm. That's controlled uncertainty, because what's predictable is manageable, and what's mysterious is powerful. Kindness is a tool, but mystery, that's armor. You don't need to be cold. You just need to be undefined. Because once people think they know exactly who you are, they stop watching you and start using you. Let them think. Let them guess. Let them doubt. You can smile, but not too often. You can answer, but not everything. You can give, but only after they've earned your attention. Machiavelli's strategy wasn't cruelty. It was silence, restraint, unpredictability. He didn't dominate with force. He dominated with the fear of potential. Because people don't fear what you do, they fear what you might do. And when your moves are wrapped in fog, they hesitate. Hesitation is power. So next time you feel the urge to explain, soften, prove your goodness, stop. And remember this. The most powerful energy in the room isn't loud. It's unreadable. If you're done being the open book in a room full of players, comment silent strength and stay close. Because in the next part, I'll show you how to turn silence into a strategic weapon, one that shifts the entire room before you say a single word. There's something unnerving about silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that makes people look twice, even when you haven't moved. It is the calm presence of someone who doesn't need to speak to control the room. The man who listens more than he reacts. The one whose expression never gives away the answer. In a world where everyone rushes to speak first, to fill the void, to be noticed, silence becomes a power move. Because silence makes people uncomfortable, and that discomfort is leverage. When you speak less, every word carries more weight. When you pause before responding, people anticipate. When you blink instead of flinch, they question their approach. You've been trained to see silence as weakness, but Machiavelli saw it as dominance. Why? Because silence creates space. And in that space, people reveal themselves. They fidget. They overshare. They explain what you never asked. Meanwhile, you stay still. Stillness is not passivity. It's surveillance. It says, I see more than I show. I hear more than I say. And you don't get access to either. Imagine this. Someone insults you. You don't flinch. Someone demands your opinion. You blink slowly. Someone wants closure. You give them silence. They'll replay the moment for days. not because of what you did, but because of what you didn't. That's not ignoring them. That's commanding them without a word. Silence forces others to feel the weight of your presence, and when used deliberately, it becomes a mirror. People start to adjust, not because you asked them to, but because your energy demanded it. If you've ever felt underestimated for being too expressive, try saying less this week. Let your silence speak. And if that idea clicks for you, comment, "I'm learning silence." Because next, we're going to break down something deadly to your influence: how predictability kills power and what to do instead. Predictability feels safe. It feels familiar. But in power dynamics, it's your slow death. The moment someone can guess your next move, your tone, your reaction, your weakness, you are no longer a presence. You are a process. And processes can be manipulated. Think of a chess game. The player who telegraphs every move becomes a training dummy for the one who's 5 steps ahead. That's what you've become in your relationships, at work, even with strangers. A predictable pattern they can exploit, adjust to, or bypass. Because if they know when you'll explain, they won't listen. If they know you'll forgive, they won't pause. If they know your boundary is just a suggestion, they'll test it again and again. Predictability creates entitlement. People start assuming you'll always answer, that you'll always be understanding, that your kindness is guaranteed. But mystery? Mystery makes people reconsider their tone. It makes them plan before speaking. It makes them tread lighter, not because you asked, but because they can't afford to misstep. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You just need to stop giving away your next 3 moves before the first one's complete. That means delay your responses. Vary your reactions. Don't always explain your absence. Leave room for interpretation. Why? Because when people can't predict you, they prepare for you. And preparation is a form of respect. Predictability isn't kindness. It's exposure. And in a world where everyone wants access, the most powerful thing you can do is make them earn it. If you're tired of being read like an open book, comment, "No more patterns." And in the next part, I'll show you how to stop over-explaining and start commanding, just by withholding. There's a moment right after someone criticizes you, where your instincts scream, say something, clarify, defend. But every time you explain, you lose something invisible. You lose tension. You lose mystery. You lose command. See, the second you justify your actions, you're not teaching them to understand you. You're teaching them that your boundaries can be negotiated. They say you're distant. And you say, "It's just been a rough week." They say you changed, and you rush to assure them nothing's wrong. But Machiavelli wouldn't explain. He'd raise an eyebrow, maybe smile, and say nothing, because silence doesn't confirm the accusation. But explaining does. You might think explaining makes you look responsible, honest, clear. But in high-stakes psychology, it makes you predictable and emotionally exposed. It tells them you still care what they think. You still feel the need to justify your actions. You still grant access to your inner world. And once they know that, they'll use it. Because access is power, and power given freely is power lost. You don't need to be cold. You need to be closed selectively. When someone crosses a line, you don't owe them a reaction. You owe yourself presence. When they push, you nod. When they ask, you smile. And when they expect closure, you give them space instead. Let them sit with the silence. Let them interpret. Let them wonder, because what they can't define, they can't control. And that's command. If you've ever walked away from a conversation wishing you had said less, comment. Withholding is power. In the next part, we step deeper into the strategy. How sending mixed signals isn't weakness. It's how you keep people emotionally off balance and respectfully cautious. We're taught that clarity is power, that being consistent, direct, and emotionally available earns respect. But here's what Machiavelli knew and what most people never realize. What's clear is easy to corner, and what's consistent is easy to manipulate. Mixed signals aren't about being cruel. They're about protecting your presence from becoming routine. Because when people can't predict which version of you they'll get, they stop taking liberties. One day, you're warm. The next, you're silent. You laugh at a joke today. Tomorrow, you blink slowly and say nothing. You support them this week and vanish the next, not to confuse them, but to teach them something subtle and unforgettable. Access to your warmth is not guaranteed. Emotional stability is important for yourself, but emotional predictability for others, that's an open gate with no guard. People don't fear chaos, they fear inconsistency, because inconsistency triggers uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to respect. Think about the boss who compliments you in private, but holds eye contact in silence during meetings. The friend who supports you fully, then disappears when you cross the line. You don't resent them. You recalibrate around them, and recalibration is the first step to submission. People stop pushing. They start measuring. They slow down, not because of fear, but because of caution. Mixed signals aren't manipulation. They're strategy. They force others to remain emotionally engaged, constantly aware that their behavior affects your response. You don't owe the world a consistent version of you. You owe yourself a protected one. If this part stirred something in you, if you've always been the emotionally consistent one, comment "they won't read me." Because next, we'll break down the daily habits that silently shift how people feel around you, without ever raising your voice. You don't need to change your personality to command respect. You just need to change your patterns. Because power isn't loud, it's habitual. And the most quietly dominant people in the world practice silent rituals every single day. Habits that make others adjust, hesitate, and sometimes flinch. Habit 1. Never be the first to react. When someone says something offensive, provocative, or baiting, don't rush to reply. Blink. Pause. Let the silence thicken. Why? Because the first to react is always the most emotionally exposed. But the one who waits forces everyone else to recalibrate. Habit 2. Speak slower. Say less, leave earlier. Slow speech signals control. Few words signal value. Leaving early creates mystery. You're not rushing to be understood. You're building tension. Most people speak to explain, but power speaks to impact. And leaving before you're fully known? It leaves a psychological loop open, a question unanswered, a moment unfinished. That's how memory is built. Habit 3. Withdraw to reinforce presence. You don't have to be everywhere to be remembered. You just have to leave space behind when you're gone. Think of it like this. The dog is always there, loyal, consistent, predictable. But the wolf? He appears, observes, then disappears. And people feel the absence. It makes them look for him, talk about him, adjust. Just in case he returns. You're not abandoning the room. You're training it to notice your absence. Habit 4. Stop explaining your boundaries. You changed your mind? So be it. You walked away? Stay gone. No justification. No emotional packaging. Because explaining is negotiating. And a threat never negotiates. These habits don't just protect you. They elevate you. They build a reputation, not of arrogance, but of gravity. People move differently around those who move with calm restraint. If one of these habits hit home, comment which one you'll start with, and get ready. Because in the next part, we unlock the deeper truth. Respect isn't built through kindness. It's built by balancing fear with reverence. You've been aiming for love, approval, likability. But here's what no one told you. Love without fear breeds entitlement. Because when someone loves you, but doesn't fear losing you, they stop protecting your place in their life. They assume you'll always be there, that your kindness is unconditional, that your silence is forgiveness. And soon, they start talking over you. They demand more than they give. Of calm layered with unpredictability, of silence that doesn't beg for peace, but promises consequence if disrupted. That tension is rare, and because it's rare, it becomes revered. People don't admire what they fully understand. They admire what they can't quite define, but can't forget either. It's not about being loved less. It's about being watched more carefully. Because when you walk into a room with tension behind your silence, people don't play games. They don't test you for fun. They calculate because the cost of misunderstanding you might be too high. That's not fear alone. That's reverent fear. You're kind, but not available. You're calm, but not passive. You're silent, but not asleep. You are respected because you made presence feel earned. If you're done with being liked but underestimated, comment, "I'm building tension," because next, we reach the final phase, where presence becomes permanent, and you become unforgettable without ever needing to explain why. He doesn't chase. He doesn't explain. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He is not feared for what he says, but for what he doesn't say, because his silence, it lingers. Long after the conversation ends, long after the room empties, long after people stop pretending they understood him. He's not distant because he's cold. He's distant because he values control over comfort. People don't know if he's pleased or planning, if he's agreeing or observing, and that confusion, that's his power. Because obsession isn't created by availability. It's created by distance. We don't replay what we fully experienced. We replay what felt almost accessible, but never fully ours. That's what the unreadable man becomes. A moment they can't close. A feeling they can't label. A presence they can't replace. And when you become this, you stop being a person to manage and start being a variable they fear miscalculating. You don't bark, you appear. And your presence changes the temperature of the room. You don't need threats. You let your absence become the consequence. When you withdraw, they rethink. When you don't react, they adjust. When you say less, they lean in more. You become untouchable, not by being above them, but by being beyond their understanding. You're not arrogant. You're aware, and that awareness is lethal. You've shed the need to be liked. You've weaponized composure. You've mastered the one form of power they can't prepare for, the presence that says nothing, but is remembered forever. If you're ready to become this version of yourself, not louder, not more aggressive, but simply unreadable, comment, "I'm becoming untouchable." Like this video if it stirred something inside you, and share it with someone who's been too easily defined for too long, because this is how you stop being overlooked and start being unforgettable.